All right, we're cruising through the season now. We're up for another high school football podcast alongside Top Dog, Chris Smith. I'm Braden Surprenant. Thanks again for tuning in to the podcast, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on the Odyssey app, which is outstanding that we can be on a lot of different mediums, if you will, to consume our content. Got to go through a quick show today, but because we don't have a lot of games this week. I mean, we're kind of in the bye week zone where only a couple of teams are playing, right before we get to league schedule, so kind of the last of the non-league. Let's talk about last week, Chris. What just kind of overall synopsis out of some of the games and scores you saw that was your biggest takeaway from last week?
First and foremost, before we get started, I got to pay a little respect. You'll see I'm wearing a red T-shirt today.
It's very bright red shirt.
So that's for the Montgomery Aztecs. Before we went off the air last week, I said they're not that team; they can't win. I had to eat crow. So shout out to head coach Freddie Dunkel, the defensive coordinator, his nephew.
His nephew's name, sorry.
Defensive coordinator TJ McKay, and their offensive coordinator and my good friend DeMarco Sampson. So,
well, you did say you didn't want. It was tough for you to pick that game because you know both sides. You knew coaches on both sides, so you had to pick, and unfortunately,
I went with the Bucks. Bucks didn't pull it out. It was a baseball score. 9-6.
It was defensive battle, baby.
Defensive battle. So.
Both teams now 4-1.
About the week, I think the biggest one was there were some surprises last week for me. There was a couple. The one that really got me was LaCosta Canyon appears to be for real.
They surprised me as well. I agree.
They might actually win the Avocado League. I
think they have a good opportunity to do so. They're definitely the number 2 team going in right now. I would imagine behind Carlsbad.
Both of the big boys. They beat Mission Hills, and then consecutive weeks ago and beat San Marcos. So I thought that was a big shocker. And then the other one that was a shock to me was Morris handled business against La Jolla. So that was a different one for me. So I think I need to start watching the Tigers a little bit closer and watching. I think the game that'll be determined playoffs is going to have big implications now is the Beach Bowl. Between Torrey Pines and LCC, so looking forward to that.
You get to see LCC play Carlsbad coming up soon too, because they haven't played each other yet. That might be all of a sudden the Avocado League championship game, where before you weren't thinking that was going to be the case. But good job with head coach Sean Sovacle and the LCC Mavericks. I mean, the way that they beat San Marcos by the score they did, I think, was the most impressive. Back-to-back weeks, knocking off the 2 San Marcos schools, obviously impressive. A couple of things. I think the Montgomery game was interesting, like you mentioned, a 9-6 game. I still think both teams are trending in the right direction. Morris, like you said, I thought they could beat La Jolla, and they took care of business, like you mentioned. I mean, they beat them down, and that's another team. In those, I think they're D3 if I'm not mistaken. There might be, I think they're D3. That's a team that might be the favorite in D3 as of right now because of everything that's laying out. Granite Hills, I'm not surprised they beat Central. I am surprised they destroyed Central. They won 42-7. I mean, they beat down a pretty good Central team from the Imperial County. So, does Granite have enough to be that East County team to rise out of Helix's shadow? Well, that will remain to be seen at the end of the season. They got a tough test this week. They got to play Madison, who hasn't been touched all season yet, hasn't really been challenged. That should be a good game. A couple other scores. I was surprised by the Cathedral de La Salle score, that they kept it within 1 score. Their offense didn't look like a normal Cathedral offense, if anybody saw that on the PPR, and if you know what I'm talking about. I mean, the ball's in the air a lot, in a lot of different sets you're not used to with Cathedral. So, is this a transition away from the wing tee? Was it just for the de La Salle? Who knows? But that game being close, I thought, was a big teller. And then the other one that surprised me, they didn't win, but they were winning at halftime, and I'm not a big moral victory guy. Saints came out and punched Helix in the mouth to get that game going. And I know Helix, at the end of the day, finished it strong and really, wore out a team that's got a lot of freshmen on. But, I think Roland Veal, the assistant coach at Helix, said on Twitter, hey, man, this Saints team is going to be good in a couple of years. I thought that was kind of telling. That they went out, they weren't afraid of Helix. They went out and punched them in the mouth and said, let's go. And, Helix finished the job. But, that was a nice, step in the right direction for a program like Saints who's, in a transition period. That's a nice little thing to build on if you're St. Augustine.
Yeah, I agree. But I want to go back to the week before, something we didn't talk about, the Saints game versus Steele Canyon. Late in the game, there was an onside kick.
Or is it they went deep too?
They went deep. You know,
we didn't talk about that.
We didn't talk about it.
And when I found out about it, I was a little upset.
We want to kind of bring it up a little bit. You know, I was a little bothered. You know, you take the week off, don't want to play St. Bonaventure, and then you go out and
Santa Margarita.
Same
thing.
Same thing.
Yeah.
You don't want to take them off because you know you got too many guys getting hurt, whatever. Which you know I can understand as a coach, whatnot. And I defended. You know,
you did.
Gladnick's
you defended them more than I did.
And then you know to come back against a team like Steele who's struggling, and to kind of stick it to them like that was. I didn't really like that.
I didn't like that either.
I didn't like that.
We didn't have time to talk about that last week because we had Miles in here and stuff like that. And
so
I actually had a couple of people ask me, did you guys talk about this? And I said, no, but I agree with you. I'm glad you brought that up because I think...
And at some point, I'm going to call Ron and, we'll have our private conversation about it. But,
it's a bad look to go, woe is me, we can't play, and then run it up on a team that you're better than because you want to, like, puff your chest out and act like you're the best team. That's a bad look.
Yeah. And that's how kids get hurt.
Right.
To be honest.
To go back to what you were saying of defending them for not making sure kids don't get hurt. Then they had the scuffle after, and some coaches had some bad remarks to say. That's not what it's about.
No.
I understand heat of the moment and everything, but to me, again, somebody's
got to be the adult in the room.
I agree.
That's just the bottom line. And you got to know better. You got to know better. You got to know that, that doesn't send the right message to your program. That's not who you want to be. That's not who you want your players to be. If you're going to win, but do a class.
The worst part, I think, what makes it everything is the fact that you had to you played the card of woe is me, we can't play with this team, and then you go beat up on another team. That's what makes it all together collectively a bad look, and they'll have to answer that when other coaches ask them about it to their face. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up because I think they're better than that.
I got phone calls. I got phone calls. I got. DMs. So
I mean, we have a good relationship with the Steele staff. They told us about it. It's like, hey,
Longermo's good dude.
Right.
I don't. If I'm playing against him, I'm coaching against him. I'm not doing that.
They're hurting right now too. I mean, they got. I think this week they're missing. There's an illness going around Steele. That's
well, no. Speaking of that, there was another one at East Lake. You heard about this? This is not a joke, but they've got like 6 guys out with foot and mouth.
Oh yeah, that's a popular thing for like kids and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, when I say popular, I mean it's like it's common more in and I'm not a doctor, but it's common more in like youth, and you see it roll through every once in a while, and some schools get it and some schools don't, and so they got it. Steele Canyon's I think they told us a lot of their school population's sick right now, so they're down to like 20 kids, and hey, guess what? They're playing on Friday. They called Cathedral. They said, "Hey, look, we're gonna play. We don't know what we got, but just easy."
Can we pick that game right now?
No, they're gonna pad your stats. Overall, because we gotta take a quick break before we talk about a topic that you want to talk about. Anything else that really stuck out to you in terms of? Yeah, I do want to bring up one: Fallbrook over Ramona.
Called that.
That's impressive. Think about Fallbrook. I want to give Fallbrook some credit. We gave RBV credit last week, and I'm going to give them some more love later on. But for a program who used to be really good and has had a lot of bad luck over the last 5, 6, 7 years, had it, bad luck with coaches, guys coming in and then having to leave because of other things. I mean, it wasn't, not a lot of it was bad blood stuff, but just, just life, and things didn't work out a lot for Fallbrook. They're sitting there at 4-1 right now, and they just beat a good Ramona team 24-7. And they're matching up for a big time matchup against RBV for the Valley League. I mean, that's we don't have a comeback team of the year award or what have you in here in San Diego, but if you're going to give one out, Fallbrook deserves it for everything that they've done this season. Very impressive. Their only loss, I think it was like a 1 touchdown or 2 touchdown. Was it 1 touchdown to UC in week 1?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty decent UC team, and they went toe-to-toe with them as well. So Fallbrook, a team in I think they're in D4, they might be in D5, that, hats off to them and what they've been able to accomplish this year.
One other kid I just want to recognize, sophomore running back over at Hoover. Got to watch him live Friday night, Sadarius Autry. Kid had 11 carries for 189 yards. He was averaging 17.2 yards a carry. That's not bad for a sophomore. He had 3 tubs too.
All right, so you called me a couple times over the weekend. Usually do. You
don't answer the phone.
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. This weekend, I got a lot of stuff this weekend actually too. A lot of stuff at USD, doing volleyball games, doing soccer games.
At 7 in the morning, so I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, you call me early in the morning. Actually, today you called me when I was in the shower, and then I had to get out and like, I'm like, oh. He's like, did you get my voicemail? Did you get my voicemail? You're like Stewie Griffin in Family Guy.
Yeah.
Hey, where's my money? Where's my money? But it's with your ideas.
But
But I thought you had a good topic of discussion when talking about transfers, and I'm going to let you lay it out, and then we can go back and forth.
Well, first and foremost, I brought my lighter with me tonight.
Oh, yeah?
I'm going to light things up.
Oh, boy. Yeah, you were fired up, dude.
I'm pretty quiet.
That voicemail is fired up. You were itching to get on this.
I thought about this because, I've been watching, first of all, you watch the NFL.
Right.
And what I grew up with, players don't stay with one team anymore.
No, not after. Once they put in free agency and trades and stuff like that.
Tyreek Hill is a Miami Dolphin, and I'm looking up and I see Matt Ryan is an Indianapolis Colt. The world we live in today, it's one and done. It's one guy plays 1 year, has a good year, and then he's out, goes somewhere else.
But the NFL is something we're used to. But then you get to the college level.
So let's talk. So we go to college. We look at the NCAA. With all the pressure. During COVID, they implemented the NIL, and they implemented the transfer portal, and they lifted the restrictions. And I made jokes for a long time about the NCAA standing for not caring about athletes, because they didn't.
They still don't.
They make a lot of money off of these kids who bring a lot of money, frankly, into these programs. And I got to thinking about this. And I went through this personally because I followed the rules, the CIF rules. I was dating a girl whose son was a sophomore running back at Bonita Vista High School.
Right.
And I'll be frank. I wanted the kid to go D1, and so I just made the decision with her and the family to move him to Cathedral. And I got a lot of criticism. I could have went to any school, but I know the rules. And the rules are, if you're going to do that, he's got to move.
Right.
So I looked at it, I was like, well, if I'm serious about getting this kid to college and I really want to do this, I'm going to have to move out of my place in Mission Valley and get a place where he's going to live with me. And she's going to have to live with me. And I have to follow the rules. Now, this was during the middle of the Cruz Estrada and Nico Estrada fiasco that happened at Mater Dei. And, CIF cleared him. And he was able to play and went on to win the state championship with Cathedral. And I'm very grateful for that experience that we went through. But it really got me to thinking about this. If the NFL doesn't care, and now the NCAA doesn't care, why the hell does high school care? Why do we care where kids go to school? And listen, if you can transfer, if your daughter is a gifted flute player and she wants to go to a musical academy, nobody blocks that transfer. If your son is a math whiz and you decide to send him to a STEM school, nobody blocks that transfer. And they say, oh, well, it's academic. Well, yeah, for some of these people, that's the only way out is academics. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. There's a lot of our population that the only way out is athletics. And I don't think it's an even playing field to not have a system to allow these kids to achieve their potential. There's
different. First of all, we got to throw the NFL out because that's a professional thing. That's all about. I don't want to say it's all about money. In a sense where like college and high school is not, because everything's always about money. But those are paid professionals, so it's not the NFL. But let's talk about college for a second. College with scholarships. I think with contracts now, with the scholarships in the wild, wild west that's open up with transfers, I think there needs to be more rules and regulations for it. But at the same time, I'm kind of done with the schools going like, oh, if you played for me at Ole Miss, I'm not going to let you transfer to another school in the SEC. Everybody should get a free transfer regardless. And then if you want to determine, I think would be fair, is like there's certain times a year you can transfer, like a free agency period, and then you can go. I think that's a fair compromise from the traditionalist of, you got to sit out, and then the new people that think everybody should just be able to leave whenever they want. There should be a time frame for when it comes to college. Now, when it comes to high school, the thing that gets tricky, and I think it has a lot to do with academics, is the whole, and I think they should go away from it, is the whole traditional sense of you have to go to the school in your district or in your neighborhood, and they make you go to that school. I've always been a believer, and you should be able to go to whatever school, because you can do it for college, any school you want. So it's like, so now you got kids some
but
kids,
there's a choice program, right? You can apply for choice.
right? But there's different rules out of it. So you're really, I mean,
But why?
theoretically,
Again, my question is why?
why do they not let you transfer?
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's something to be said about. I think coming out of 8th grade, you should be able to go whatever high school you want to.
I think any year, any place, any time, you should be able to go to any high school you want to. Now,
I think you should be able to transfer.
You shouldn't be able to transfer in the middle of a football season.
I agree. Again, back to the times when you're allowed to transfer.
Right.
So at the end of a semester
Yep.
or at the end of the school year,
Yep.
you should be allowed to transfer.
And listen, if a kid goes to force, here's the other thing that made a point to me, okay? Years ago, before the portal, college coaches used to say to me all the time, we're not touching a kid who transfers 2 or 3 times. And so I understood that. I heard it. I sat down with the recruiters and said, look, he makes a second transfer, Chris, he's off our board.
Right, because
he's
then
not a loyal guy.
because before it's like, well, what
Right.
am I going to do? Like, have to? I
Right.
don't want to recruit my own guys, but
Right.
now they have to.
So now, with that whole rule being out, the reality is college coaches don't care.
No,
If those
because
guys
they
are
already
making
know
money,
that they're going to have to
they're
have a
gonna have
brand
to
new
deal with
team
that.
every
So
year.
You talk to these guys like out of Southern section. I think this kid just had to go to court, and they proved that it was a athletically motivated transfer, and the kid sat for a year. And I'm thinking to myself, in what world do adults get to decide the future of a child and punish him for simply trying to go somewhere where he wants to be?
So if we go back to my original thing, if you first of all, like I said, you should be allowed to go to every school you want to.
Okay.
I think you should be allowed to.
If you get the transportation, go for it.
If your family's going to make the sacrifice to make it happen, whether paying in gas and you got to drive a whole way or moving or whatever
Ride a bus or
whatever it
you
may
gotta do to
be,
get it done.
if they want to go to that school and they'll make the means happen to go to that school, they should be allowed to go to that school. And I think we're starting to get some of
Taxpayer
that.
shouldn't have to pay for that. I agree with that. Johnny Taxpayer shouldn't have to pay for that. Yeah, but if you as a family make the decision, if I want to go to Torrey Pines and I live in Otay Ranch and I want to go to Torrey Pines, it's on me to find transportation to that school.
Well, the transportation, yeah, that's fine.
That's
like
it.
there shouldn't be like a city-funded bus, but most, a lot of these schools now, a lot of parents drive their kids to school nowadays. But
and for the record, I mean, everybody.
But again, that's the sacrifice that they make.
Everybody, it came down on me pretty hard when I made the choice to go to Cathedral versus Lincoln. But I knew Roderick Robinson was there. We didn't want to share the backfield with Roderick, so we decided to come up and play with Lucky Sutton. Now, with that said, everybody was like, "Oh, where's the bus pick you up at your house?"
But that goes back to schools and programs thinking they.
It's misunderstandings and it's wrong information. So I just want to be clear: there was no bus picking my son up. We had to drive him from Otay Ranch up to Cathedral every day to go to school.
There's a lot of kids that do that for a lot of schools.
That sacrifice in order to provide an education and a football. I mean, athletics was important to us. So was academics. So I decided to go to the best school I thought was in my financial means.
So again, I think you should be able to go to whatever school you want coming out of 8th grade.
Yep.
Okay, that your family is willing to do.
Yep.
I think that's fair. Once you're in school, I think once you transfer, I think you should be able to transfer during certain times, end of semester, end of year.
Yep.
Okay. Now,
and I don't think head coaches should be able to block a transfer. Here's the bottom line, and I'm gonna say this, and
definitely
coaches can be mad or whatever. I don't care if you're the athletic director and the head coach. Bottom line is, if a kid doesn't want to be in your program, let him go.
So
it's like a bad relationship. If the girl breaks up with you, don't try to keep her around. Let her go.
Now, the fear of that obviously is, like it is now in college where you got guys recruiting other players from other schools and in between. I understand that. But once you start...
It's going to happen regardless.
I know, but let me finish. Once you start, okay, again, transfer times, it's fine.
Yep.
I think after a certain amount of transfers, I do think a kid should have to sit out a certain amount of games. Now, before you go off on me on that, I do not think ever, and I mean ever, there's a situation where you should exclude a child from playing an entire year of a sport when he's got 4 years in high school to play.
I agree.
Ever.
I agree.
Now, if it's like a weird thing where you you can't have
the Olave rule needs to be gone for good.
It can't be a year thing. But the same thing is you can't. I think there needs to be a rule too where you can't be at a different school for every sport you play.
I agree with that.
I think that's fair. So if you play football at Cathedral and you transfer, and you want to play baseball at Torrey, there's no transferring back and forth to play on the best team. That needs to be kicked in the butt.
That I agree.
Okay, so I think we're on the same page there.
If your junior year you played football and baseball for Cathedral, and then your senior year you decide you want to go over there and play at Torrey, you have whatever school you start with, you have to finish that year with that sports.
So if you're at Cathedral in the fall, in the springtime, you can't play baseball?
If you go to Torrey.
See, I feel like if you miss some games, that's fine.
Okay.
You should be allowed to play. At some point, you should be allowed to play.
The bottom line is
there needs to be a little bit of a tournament.
We need to negotiate.
Well, let's talk about. We might have to take a quick break, but I got a story about how this impacted me when I was a senior. Okay. And we'll let you know when I come back. All right, so I teased before. Okay, this kind of impact that happened. So my senior year, we had to forfeit the playoffs.
I remember that.
At Cathedral.
I remember that.
So it went from playing football, getting ready for the postseason, to me never playing football ever again.
That's terrible.
It's terrible. For something that happened in which a kid was at our school the first year as a freshman, did not play football. He played basketball. He transferred to another school.
What school?
He transferred to Westview.
Okay.
Didn't play football, played basketball as a sophomore.
Okay.
Comes back to Cathedral his junior year.
Let me guess, he wants to play football?
He wants to play football. So we let him play football. They go through all the things. Never played football before. And it's on our athletic department too for not, at the time, checking. Right. But they never got the clearance from Westview to let him play sports because they didn't think about it because he never played football.
So the entire team was penalized?
So what CIF, Cathedral self-reports the issue. They find it because he's signing up for basketball in the playoffs, right? Because basketball is getting ready to start up. So he's a basketball player and is getting ready to play basketball. So he signs up for basketball.
Do we have a little tweak?
Yeah, the light's freaking out. Anyway, so he signs up for basketball. The school notices that
he never got cleared from Westview.
They never asked permission from Westview if he was allowed to play. So Cathedral could have theoretically not said anything and rolled the dice and hopefully nobody noticed. But what Cathedral did was they called CIF and said, look, this is what happened. We missed it, yada, yada, yada. CIF comes back with, all right, that's fine, but you guys have to forfeit every game he played in. He used to get in because he never played football before. That season, he got in 8 games in trash time when we were destroying somebody. So he comes in trash time, plays receiver, whatever. We have to forfeit 8 games. In the CIF San Diego rules, if you forfeit more than 2 games, you're automatically ineligible for the playoffs. The playoffs were already seeded. We were the number 1 seed in Division III. My senior year. We found out about it Monday before that playoff game.
Jeez.
We fought it in court, didn't win. I found out Friday, 3 o'clock, after preparing all week just in case, you will never play football again. Because adults couldn't figure out their stuff. And CIF said, well, rules are rules. Without understanding anything of the situation.
Listen.
But here's the deal. Here's the deal. And it's on Cathedral for not paying attention. But a couple of things that I thought was odd.
I don't care about blame, though, man. What I care about is kids.
Right. So, I'm still pissed off about that. I never got to play again.
But why are we making these rules that affect children's future?
Here's another one. Peter, I think his last name was Favalele, whatever. He played with my brother at Cathedral.
I remember
Peter.
I remember Peter. Big guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
wasn't he from the islands?
So he's from American Samoa.
Right.
So he was here his freshman year.
Right. Went back there.
He went back there because he had to protect his mom.
Yep.
Because
I remember that.
Bad stuff kept happening at his house. He had to go protect his mom. Yep. So then he went to a school in American Samoa.
Yep.
And then he went to another school in American Samoa.
Yep.
And then he came back to live with his family over here.
Yep.
And he was getting ready to start the season. And CIF said he transferred 3 times. He cannot play a single snap all season.
I remember that. I remember wondering why, Pete.
So he gets hosed.
What about the Olave situation?
But then there's other kids too that like. But the thing is, it's the picking and the choosing, which I don't understand with CIF. So then to go back to kind of relate it back into what we were talking about to start
the old
the Olave thing was dumb too. It wasn't like the older Olave couldn't play or something.
He sat out a year. Well, they
both
both
sat out a year. Yeah, a year. That's ridiculous.
One sat out senior year, one sat out the junior year.
That's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
I think a lot of people, and this went around, because the CIF commissioner was a Helix guy. They're like, oh wow, if he went to Helix, he'd probably play.
I don't know.
Skeptical, I think, for a lot of people.
Well,
but then you start playing.
Did Isaac Taylor Stewart have to sit?
No.
When he left?
He went to Helix. He didn't have to sit. There's guys all the time that transfer and don't have to sit.
And so did he move? Did he move?
No. So it's the picking and choosing. And what about,
so the argument is, they can't follow their 707 coach. I've heard that one until I'm blue in the face, dude.
And I understand it.
No, but I'm done with it.
Hold on. I understand it, but it's, again, the picking and the choosing of when they wanted to enforce that. That happened in girls basketball. Christian High had they got a brand new coach that coached some travel team that I don't remember what it was. Yep. They had 4 girls from that travel team leave the high school they were at, follow their travel coach to Christian. They had to sit out I think half the season before they played. But let's rope it back into the whole conversation of the rules that we kind of would like to see. I think school choice is good. I think it's good for everybody, including athletes, academics, any place that you think, that you are willing to sacrifice to send your kid for the betterment of your kid's life, you should be allowed to do.
Yep.
Once that starts, if things go south and it's not working out, you should be allowed to transfer. I think that's fine. I think once clean, fine, especially lower levels.
Yeah.
If they don't play any varsity sports,
absolutely,
freshman, sophomore year, they shouldn't have to sit any games.
Right.
Okay, I think after 2 transfers, you might have to miss a couple games.
4-game suspension.
I even think that's a little long.
Yeah.
Something. They could sit out 1 game. I don't care. As long as they sit out 1 game and there's some type of deterrent from just making sure the kid doesn't transfer every semester, I think that's fine. But you should never have a situation where Nico Estrada has to miss the entire year.
I agree.
Because it's not his fault.
It was unfortunate.
And it's not his fault.
That whole situation was completely unfortunate.
He should be allowed to play at least a game. You only get to be in high school for 4 years, and that's it.
Yep.
That's including homecoming and all that stuff.
So let me ask you this. Why do you think, what's the driving factor? Because I've always heard straight out that if you've gotten a good attorney, CIF doesn't mess with you.
Well, yeah, because CIF doesn't want to. They don't have the money to pay legal fees, so they're afraid of people like that. So I think a lot of it is getting a little bit better in a sense of they're a little bit more lenient with some of the transfers now because they just don't want to deal, and it's happening all the time. But at this point, with the way college is and the way school is now,
time for a change.
Well, yeah, it's they're already doing it anyway. Why set yourself up for ridicule?
Yeah.
If you're CIF, why even waste your time dealing with it?
It's not working.
At least, but set a simple standard set. Like you transfer at the end of the year or at the end of the semester. If you transfer once, you're clean. If you transfer twice, you miss 3 games. If you transfer 3 times, you miss 4. Whatever you want to make it, and then just go. That's what it is. That's what we know. If you want to file for a hardship or a movement, go ahead. Because the other thing, there's a lot of. People have a lot of different things going on with their lives. Kids are getting thrown between divorces and all this other stuff. That's not the kid's fault. Yeah. So those all should be hearings based on whether or not to eliminate those games. But there should never be a 1 year you're out.
Yeah, I agree. So let's get to if anybody wants to continue this, feel free to hit DMs on Braden and myself on Twitter. It's at B_Serp.
That's right.
And then mine's obviously at the official Top Dog.
Your original Top Dog.
The original Top Dog. Yeah, Nike banned me from the other one.
So that's we'll get on that. When we come back, we're gonna give you your top 10s and pick the games this week. He's Top Dog Chris Smith. I'm Braden Surprenant. Thanks again for tuning in to the High School Football Podcast. Real quick, we want to talk about the top 10 this week: Madison, Lincoln, Carlsbad Cathedral, Helix, Poway, Granite Hills, LCC, Mater Dei, Mira Mesa from the UT.
I got Lincoln, Cathedral, Madison, Carlsbad, and then everybody else.
Helix?
Yeah, I'll say Helix.
Poway, Granite, Mater Dei, Mira Mesa, La Costa.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
That's pretty much mine. The only difference is I have Cathedral 1, Madison 2, Lincoln 3. I think the 3 Western League teams are the best teams in the county, and then I think there's a drop-off.
Can I say this?
Yes.
Oorah.
Not a lot of chirping from the avocado.
Yeah, what's up? Where all my North County haters at? Where all my North County haters at? That always said that, all my El Camino fans was hating on me, all my Oceanside fans. Where y'all at? Where you at?
As 2 guys that played in City League. City League's got the best.
City League's running this.
That's right. We're going to puff our chest out when we have the opportunity to do
Absolutely.
so.
It's our time to be on top.
So my top 10, Cathedral, Madison, Lincoln, Carlsbad, Helix, Poway, Granite, Mater Dei, Mira Mesa, and La Costa Canyon. Games of the week, tomorrow.
Yep.
Not tomorrow. Thursday. Montgomery at Castle Park. It's going to be our South Bay game of the week. Not a lot of South Bay teams are playing this week. Obviously, I got Montgomery in this one over Castle Park, but that's a decent game on Thursday.
I'll take Montgomery. I'm wearing the shirt.
If you were to go against Montgomery 2 weeks in a row and do it wearing the shirt, I think you'd have a lot of. We'd have to talk about some things.
Yeah,
I think Montgomery would have to call you again. Game of the week, I think for me, and again, I do my own that we do on the show compared to all the other networks. Granite Hills 4-1, 7 in the county against number 3 Madison, who's 4-0.
I'm taking Madison.
I'm taking Madison too. Does Granite Hills keep it within 2 touchdowns?
No.
3 touchdowns.
No.
Madison hasn't been challenged within 4 touchdowns all year.
35-14 Madison.
North County game of the week. Not going Avocado League. I'm going Palomar versus Valley League. The Mount Carmel Sun Devils at 3-1 going against the Rancho Buena Vista Longhorns, who are a perfect 5-0.
That's a really good game.
That's a pretty good game right there.
Listen, I can't go against Connor. I love Drew and Coach Heff over there, and of course Deontay Lee. I got a lot of family over at Mount Carmel, but Connor Underhill is special, and they got one of the best running backs in the county. I don't think that the defense is going to be able to stop both of those weapons. I'm going to say 6-0 for the Rancho Buena Vista Longhorns.
All right, I'm going Rancho Buena Vista as well. And Chris is in the dark right now with his camera. Forgot we turned his camera off during the last break on accident. Servite at Helix. Servite, CalPreps rating-wise, is pretty close to Helix. They're having a really miserable year. They are in a Trinity League team, but I do want to bring this up real quick. If Helix beats Servite, they will get the same type of points for their CalPreps rate or for their CIF ratings, Chris, as if they played Steele Canyon.
That's terrible.
That is the problem with the CIF rankings right there. Think about what I just said.
I hear you.
I don't want to disrespect Steele Canyon, but just Steele Canyon is a D1 school that's going to have maybe 2 wins all year. If Helix beats Servite, it's the same as if they beat Steele Canyon. Because Servite, by the way, is not going to win another game the rest of the year because they're going to go into Trinity League play and they're going to get smoked. It's a down year at Servite after a really good year last year.
What's that phrase? It is what it is.
Do you think the Highlanders beat a Trinity League school?
No. I think Servite still wins.
I think Servite wins too. City game of the week, La Jolla at Point Loma. Point Loma 4-1, La Jolla 3-2, coming off the loss from Morse. Pretty good game as Point Loma's running the wing T now and off to a pretty good start.
I'm surprised about Point Loma. They're one of the underdog stories, and I like what direction they're going in. But I'm not going to bet against the Vikings. They're not going to have 2 losses in a row. They'll bounce back against the loss against Morris, and I think La Jolla wins this game.
A couple other games for you. Escondido Charter White Tigers are 4-0. They're playing at Santa Fe Christian, who's 4-1 of our small school game of the week, if you will.
Santa Fe Christian.
I'm taking Santa Fe Christian too. Steele Canyon at Cathedral. Wanted to pick that game.
Cathedral.
Mater Dei Crusaders at St. Augustine. Does Mater Dei get their first win, or does St. Augustine go to 3-3?
Well, considering the heads are going to roll at Mater Dei if they don't win this game, I mean, you started season 0-5 with all that talent. I'm going to take Mater Dei, or I think somebody's getting replaced.
That's at Mesa. Mater Dei. Mater Dei should. This is the first game Mater Dei is playing this year where they're not playing a top 5 team.
It's still a top 5 program in the county.
Right.
It's no guarantee. It's not a walk in the park.
They punched Helix in the mouth last week.
It's not a walk in the park.
The Liberty Patriots are coming to town to take on the Carlsbad Lancers. Both teams are 3-1. Liberty, one of the better teams in Bakersfield. They are ranked higher than Carlsbad in CalPreps.
I'm going to take Carlsbad for the upset.
Would that be our first big out-of-town win?
I think they got a chance against Liberty. I think Liberty's been practicing in the heat. It's going to be a little bit colder of a game. Game's down here, right?
Oh, they got the coastal. Yeah, they got the Marine layer rolling in.
The Marine layer rolling
They're not
in.
going to know what that's
and listen,
like.
they're not used to playing against a quarterback like Julian's saying. It's one thing to see it on film. It's another thing to actually play against him.
I think Carlsbad should be able to win that game. I think, honestly, to go back to I think Helix keeps it close against Servite. They kept it close last year against one of either them or Mission Viejo. I think it was them for the most part. They got Mission Viejo next week.
That's not good.
Good luck. That's not going to be fun.
That's not good.
A lot of good topics today, Chris. Appreciate the conversation on transfers. Again, if you want to weigh in on that, comment right here on the YouTube page. Comment on the Coach's Corner. Tag us on social media at @B_SURP, at Original Top Dog on social media. He is the Top Dog, Chris Smith. I'm Braden Surprenant. Big shout out to another Top Dog. His name's Todd Durkin, TD, for letting us use his studio. Anything else?
Yeah, I got one more thing. For the guy who posted on there, why don't we have Ben and Woods on our show? It's because this is the high school football podcast.
Somebody posted that?
Yeah,
What does Ben and Woods want to do on the high school?
Nothing.
They
They
want
don't
to talk
know
about the
anything about this.
Padres.
They talk about the Padres.
I'd like them to
But
talk
thanks
about
for the
Padres.
comment. We appreciate you watching.
Appreciate it. So, for Chris Smith, I'm Braden Surprenant. Thanks again for tuning in to the High School Football Podcast. We'll be back next week. Nice recap. Hopefully, we'll get through these 2 bye weeks as quickly as possible because we like to see as many games as possible. We'll see you guys next time.